1. Hello everyone. This is the first time I've thought to share this story, even though it's lingered in my mind for a long time. I've googled it multiple times and nothing comes up, but I know what I saw, and I remember it clearly. If anyone has an explanation, I would love to hear it, even though I doubt there is an explanation. I also don't know if this is paranormal, but here goes. I was 5 or 6 when this happened. I was in kindergarten. My parents have always rented, and this time we were in a basement at my godmother's home. I remember it crystal clear and could set up the room exactly how it was when this happened. My parents had 2 separate beds. We had a chimney we blocked off with a bunch of stuff. The chimney was off the ground, about a foot. It had a 6-inch brick around it. I don't know how to explain it, but it is important. One of the beds was parallel to the chimney, slightly to the left, so not completely centered to the chimney. I was sleeping on it with my mom. My mom was against the wall, and I was the other side, no wall blocking me. My dad was sleeping on the bed right next to the chimney. They had it propped up on that footwall around the chimney. Now to the scary part. I remember having a bad dream. I remember the dream fully, but it has no purpose. The reason why I'm saying I remember it fully is important because I woke up from it. Because it was a nightmare I was having, so I know what I saw next was not a dream. I woke up and was frightened, but I was instantly paralyzed because the first thing I see out of the corner of my eye was a human. But he was made out of a specific pattern or wrapped in a full bodysuit. Keep in mind this whole time, I was moving my eyes, and it wasn't sleep paralysis because under the sheets, I was wiggling my finger to wake up my mom without the figure seeing me move. So as I kept trying to wake up my mom without getting the attention of whatever the hell that was, I kept my eyes locked on it. When I first woke up, he was about 30 inches away from me to my right. He then walked towards the chimney and then sat on the foot surrounding wall next to the bed where my dad was sleeping. He sat there for about 30 seconds. Again, I was not paralyzed at this point. I was trying to pat my mom to get her attention. The figure then stood up and just stood in place for about 15 seconds. The next part is hard to explain and imagine for you listening to this. He laid near my dad and went into his body. Think of a cartoon when a spirit possesses someone. There was nothing for about 30 seconds. At this point, I started whispering, "Mommy," in the most quiet voice, way too low for my mom to hear, while trying to shake her at this point. The figure sits up and stands up, and he walks toward a closet we had with a rod to hang clothes on, and for some reason my parents hung a suit weirdly. The figure walks and stands right in front of the hanging suit, and disappeared. As soon as that happened, I shook my mom and started yelling and finally woke my mom up, and my dad too, from my screams. I told him there was a green man. They walked toward the suit, and nothing was there. Anyone I tell plays it off or says I was dreaming when I wasn't. I even thought my godbrother bought a hologram as a prank. It has always lingered in my mind. Part of me wonders if it was some sort of demon. Like I said, it interacted with my dad, and my dad has struggled with alcoholism even to this day. He's not in our life anymore, and he's just had misfortune in his life. I don't know, I feel like I'm trying to justify what I saw. If no one else has experienced this, I hope to at least be heard for once. Anyway, thank you for listening. 2. Many years ago, I was a bored teenager in the house alone on a Saturday afternoon, and I decided to make a Ouija board from, of all things, a travel Scrabble set. Dumb, right? Nevertheless, I made it, grabbed the glass, and tried to make contact with who or whatever was there in the great beyond. Just because. Several times I asked, "Is there anybody there?" Now, I wasn't really expecting anything to happen, and for a few moments nothing did. But then the glass started to move under my finger towards the corner of the board, with tiles arranged to spell yes. That was enough for me. I returned the glass to the kitchen and hastily disassembled the board, suitably freaked out. Now, I'm prepared to believe in hindsight that maybe I consciously moved the glass myself, but I was pretty scared at the time. The house suddenly felt oppressive, and I felt ill at ease enough to want to get out of there as soon as possible. So I locked up and decided to get on my bike and ride to a friend's place, to be around other people and relax. The journey took about 15 minutes, but the oppressive, uneasy feeling stayed with me the whole way. When I arrived at my friend's house, I knocked on the back door and got no response. Peering through the windows, it was plain that there was no one home. I decided to try another friend, and again, there was nobody home. In all, I tried 6 or 7 friends, cycling some distance between all of the houses. This was in a quite rural area, and no one was home. Not my friends, not their family members, no one. In every case, I peered through the window each time, feeling increasingly paranoid, but not a little desperate, and in each case, no one was there at all. And this is the weird part. Every time I peered into their window, I could see my friend's high school photo of that year staring back at me and smiling very oddly, in a very unearthly way. I felt very conscious that I was being watched by something that seemed to manifest through the photos. It's hard to describe exactly, but it felt that in each instance I was expected. Like the photos I knew were coming and knew I'd be alone without the safety of other people. The best way I can think to describe it is that I felt like I was being toyed with by something playfully malevolent, if that makes any sense at all. By the time of the last house, I had traveled miles and used up most of the afternoon, and so, tentatively, I returned home. My family were there at this point, and the place, thankfully, felt normal again. When asked what I'd done with my day, I simply said I'd been on a bike ride, and that was that. I'm aware that most of this can be chalked up to a mixture of coincidence and the power of suggestion, but the whole experience felt uncanny. When I saw their photos again in following visits, they looked perfectly normal, of course, but I can't decide whether I'd worked myself up into a state of near delusion, or if something else had actually happened. I guess I'll never know. 3. Okay, so my husband and I live in an old and tiny one-bedroom cabin, up in the mountains, in the Wasatch Front. Based off the rumors of my little town, this cabin has been here since the early 1900s, but the layout has changed some over the years. The bedroom is where the kitchen used to be, and the kitchen was moved to the center, as well as some windows and one door have been boarded up. We have been here for just over a year now, and when we first moved in, we were in high hopes. The first few months had gone by great, nothing odd or out of place. It has been a slow progression over time. The first thing I noticed is how cold this cabin is all the time, mainly the bedroom. We heat our home with a wood-burning stove in what we call our living bedroom. We moved into the living room to stay warmer. It's the only part of our cabin that actually stays warm. We have even used a fan that blows warm air into the bedroom and a radiator to heat up the kitchen. But we could never really get those rooms to stay warm. Obviously, the 2 winters we have been here have been rough. A lot of cold nights, and our animals cuddled in bed with us. It's been so cold that we have even lost a bunch of houseplants. It's been really hard to get any plant to really last here. The bedroom has an east-facing window and gets a bunch of light. You would think that it would warm up a bit, but it never really does. It just stays cool all the time. After we moved out of the bedroom, we sort of shunned it for some time. Neither of us really wanted to spend much time in there. We did try to turn it into a living room space to make it more inviting, but that didn't really work. It just felt so claustrophobic. We have since made the best of it by turning it into our bar/office space. When we were sleeping there, I often found myself always staring into the darkness of the closet. I really struggled to pull my eyes away from it. I'm not really sure why I felt like I had to always keep an eye on it. Even to this day, I still want to get out of it as quickly as possible when I have to go in there. Before moving, neither my guy nor myself ever really had nightmares. But now from time to time we do. Recently, we even had a similar nightmare just days apart. My husband said that in his dream he was laying in bed in the dark trying to sleep, but he couldn't. He felt like someone was standing over him. When he opened his eyes, there was a dark shadow looming over him. He said it felt dark. Then he woke up. He said that in his dream he felt like he was awake, and he was really shocked when he woke up. My dream started out the same as his. I was in bed trying to sleep, but I felt like someone was watching me. When I opened my eyes to see if something was there, I saw a dark shadow standing in the doorway into the kitchen. I felt frozen. I felt like I shouldn't take my eyes off of it, but I had to blink. When I did, the shadow had moved and was standing over me. I felt trapped. I thought I was awake. I was completely surprised when I jumped awake. Nothing was there. No shadow. Just the darkness of our room. Now there is an odd white mist that apparently only I can see. And it's not just seen from the corner of my eye, it happens right in front of me. It's like a little puff of smoke that just seems to happen out of nowhere. And only when I am alone. Some days I see it multiple times, other times several days will pass without a single sighting. I've tried to look it up before. The non-paranormal sites say it's something that happens when warm air and cool air mix. But I don't really think that is the case because I'll see it happen all over the cabin. Next to me or across the room, warm or cold. And it comes and goes quickly. It never lingers. I've asked my husband multiple times if he's ever noticed a mist, but every time he says no. Luckily, he doesn't think I'm crazy. What do you guys think the white mist is? Paranormal, or do you think there could be another explanation? Oh, and I want to note that none of my animals have been acting strangely. If something is in our little cabin, then they either have not noticed or they just don't care. We also have a creepy cellar that none of us want anything to do with. We've blocked off the door with a desk. 4. For context, this event happened when I was 12 years old, 27 now. And my maternal grandma, who was about 50 at the time, was living with us. Church, Christian if it makes a difference, was a big part of our family life at the time. But at this point I didn't consider myself to believe in any religion, and thought, still do, religion was pretty hypocritical, and I hated going to church and church events. My grandma was the complete opposite of me regarding religion. She once upon a time was addicted to drugs, and had since been clean for about a year, and moved to another state for a fresh start with myself, my mom, stepdad, and my 2 younger siblings. I only mention the drug use because if I hadn't been around to witness this event myself, I'm sure this event would have just been forgotten and chalked up to Grandma being Grandma, as she was known for embellishing. One Friday night, I went to bed kind of early, and my grandma would either sleep on an air mattress on my floor or just the bare floor, as that was sometimes more comfortable for her. This night she slept on the floor. I remember waking up because she was praying so loud it sounded as if she was yelling. So after a few seconds I dramatically roll over from facing the wall to face her, to hint that she was being too loud. The TV was on, but was muted, so there was light coming from the TV. She continued praying loudly, saying things like, "In God's name, release the demons from this home," and so on. So after a few more seconds, I decided to open my eyes, and was going to tell her she was interrupting my sleep, and that's when I saw them. I was laying on my left side facing the TV and my grandma now, and as soon as my eyes opened, I saw what I can only describe as wispy Casper the Ghost-like figures, but without the friendly expressions, and not as defined in shape, floating up from the ground and disappearing into the ceiling. There were a lot of them, at least 50 if I had to guess. Some were see-through with black where eyes and mouth should have been, some were a solid black. Immediately I became flooded with fear and felt as though my heart dropped into my stomach. After maybe 5 seconds, I somehow convinced myself I was dreaming, as there was no way this could be possible. I even turned back to the wall, and strangely enough fell back to sleep immediately, even though my grandma was still basically yelling. The next morning, I was the last to make it to the kitchen for Saturday breakfast, and had totally forgotten what I saw the previous night. That is until my grandma enthusiastically started telling the whole family you wouldn't believe what happened last night. I was praying and asking God to release the demons from this house, and all these demons just started coming out of the ground while I was praying. At this point I froze and immediately remembered my dream, thinking my grandma was somehow pulling my leg. In retrospect, how could she have known what I saw? And also, to solidify what I thought I saw, I asked her to describe these demons, without telling her or anyone at the table my experience. She described every single detail of my dream, including the number of these demons, as she called them. How some were wispy and see-through, some were solid black, but they all floated from the ground and disappeared into the ceiling. I was in complete shock. There was no way we could have had the same dream, and my mom endorsed she heard Grandma praying loudly the night before. I remember stumbling over my words and repeatedly telling my parents and Grandma that I saw the exact same thing, but thought I was dreaming. My parents were just like, yeah, okay, sure you did. And I kept insisting this shouldn't be possible. Finally, my mom said she believed it, but it was more so just to shut me up so we could eat. My grandma, of course, believed me, but was more shocked this event happened in the first place. Years later, after bringing this up with Grandma and my mom admitted she really did believe us, and she's had her own experiences. To this day, I don't practice any religion or believe in demons, but it definitely makes me wonder. How did we both see the same unexplainable thing? Just as my grandma was casting out demons, did we see these figures coming from the ground and disappear into the ceiling? What if my grandma didn't mention this at breakfast the next morning? Would I have just suppressed this memory? Neither of us has had an experience like this since. All I can say for sure is if it wasn't for my grandma bringing this up at breakfast, or the fact that we both verified the same things, I 100% wouldn't have believed I saw something that to this day defies logical explanation. Just to clarify, I am not a skeptic or looking to disprove what I know my grandma and I saw. I think people might get hung up on me not being religious due to the obvious religious nature of the experience. I'm not an atheist, agnostic, but as a mere mortal, this experience left me with more questions than answers. If I thought the paranormal didn't exist, and now I know it does, what else am I getting wrong? I thought demons were from hell. Why then were they all floating upwards towards heaven? Is there more than one kind of demon? Are they even really demons, or do they go by another name? Was this the work of a singular god, or did my grandma invoke a specific god? What about non-Christians who conjure up their gods, and also have witnesses to back it up? Going down this rabbit hole is why I can't say for sure they were demons. Definitely paranormal. Not sure how much of the religious part is right or wrong, though. 5. I grew up in a home in New England. The house was built in the 70s and no one died there. But it was built in unclaimed land at that time. Anyways, I lived there from when I was 5 until I was 19, and I can always remember some creepy things happening to me there. I'll start with a softball that could have been the result of a faulty door. Or more realistically, someone who tried to break in. One night when I was 8, my whole family and I woke up to my dog barking downstairs. When we went down there, she was sitting in front of our front door, which was wide open. Naturally, me and my sisters freaked. My dad, being the no-nonsense Air Force guy he was, searched the house with our dog, and explained it as the wind, and that we needed to get the door fixed. My dad could have been right, but I never remembered it being a windy night. There was no damage to our door, no crowbar marks from someone trying to pry it open, no new scratches on the locks, etc. But I think the freakiest thing that scared me was, if there was a threat, whether it be person or animal, my dog for sure would have tried to chase after it. This is the only instance I shared with my whole family. The rest going forward are instances I experienced alone. When I was a little older, I felt that whatever presence was in my house was trying to get me to notice it. On a handful of occasions, I'd wake up from a loud noise, almost like a door slamming, followed by what sounded like heavy footsteps that would go up my stairs halfway, then stop. I could never muster up the courage to check. I remained in bed paralyzed with fear and dread. This one, similarly, may have an explanation. My older sister recently admitted to us that when she was a teenager, she would often sneak out only to return late at night. The only thing with that is, as I mentioned, my dad was in the Air Force, and while he was still our goofy, fun-loving dad, he was not someone you wanted to piss off. You think my sister would try to be as quiet as she could, slowly closing the front door and tiptoeing up the stairs, careful not to wake anyone, not slamming the door with such force that it would wake me up, and stomping on our worn stairs that creaked when walking up them. This could be a coincidence, and I could very well be relying too heavily on my childhood memory, which is likely to embellish. These next 3 instances I'm about to explain happened to me when I was older, 11 to 14, and they are still very fresh in my memory. One night, I was in my room watching TV, Phil of the Future to be exact, and all of a sudden I felt my body vibrating, my room seemed brighter, loud white noise drowned out the noise from the show, and I felt this energy walk through me in my bed. It felt like a few seconds, but when it was over, I was sweating and panting, trembling from whatever just happened to me. I didn't tell anyone at the time because I didn't know how to explain it. I guess looking back, maybe I could have had a seizure, but I was a relatively healthy child, and this never happened to me before or ever again. Then the singing. It was late at night, and I was definitely past my bedtime watching That's So Raven in my room. Disney just doesn't make them like they used to. It was when I felt tired and turned off my TV that it started. A soft, slow, melancholy-sounding humming. I sat up from my bed, thinking my mom must have fallen asleep on the couch and that the TV was on. I got out of bed to check only because that mentioned scenario happened so often. I was surprised to find my living room empty and the TV off. I didn't yet panic, however. Our TV was interesting in the sense that we had a box for the TV audio, and if you didn't turn that off, but turned the TV itself off, you were left with a black screen and the audio still playing. It must have been that someone forgot to turn off the audio when some freaky movie was on with a creepy kid. I went to the box to find it completely off. Starting to feel a little unsteady, I decided to go back upstairs and try to get some sleep, rationalizing that it was in my head. When I turned off the light and got under the covers, it started again but slightly louder. I sat up in my bed once more, jumping out of it and walking to my door, quickly opening it and stepping out into the hallway. I was met with silence. I went back into my room, locked my door, like that was going to help, and got back into bed. It started again, louder and discordant, almost like there were 2 voices, and they were trying and failing to meet each other's pitch. I had enough and turned my TV back on to That's So Raven in the hopes of drowning out the noise. The next morning, I brought it up to my mom, and she stated that she slept through the night and heard nothing. I try to wrap my head around what could have been the logical explanation for why I heard the humming. I can't think of anything. If any of you rationalists have a thought, please feel free to share it. The next and last instance that I'll mention is what broke me and had me convinced my home was haunted. Or I alone was being haunted, as no one else had any occurrences. I lived on a dead-end street that many cars think has an outlet to the main road, but only get turned around at the end of my neighborhood. As such, it was not uncommon for cars to pass by our house, their lights briefly illuminating my room before it went to black. Something woke me up one night, but I couldn't place it. It wasn't a sound or a feeling. I just simply woke up. I saw the familiar sight of some poor sap trying to find their way, only to realize they were going to have to backpedal. The car came closer and closer, and then it made the famous left turn that illuminated my room. It was when my room was lit up that I saw her. She was in the corner of my room. She was a colorless, tall, and lanky figure. Her limbs were malnourished, her hair greasy, long, and gnarled, covering the left half of her face. She wore a dress that was tattered and filthy. She first looked as though she was going to walk across my room until it looked like she was going to run towards me. In a flash, the car had passed my room, and as a result of my room going dark again, she was gone. I turned on my light, immediately thinking this would keep me safe. I started crying and shaking. The figure I saw was so horrible, broken, and seemed destitute. After this, I finally told my mom the next morning, stating that I didn't want to sleep in my room anymore. My mom, not wanting to have a 14-year-old basket case, told me that she experienced the things I had once before as well. My aunt, who died young of cancer, used to seemingly visit her in her dreams, bringing other dead figures with her. My mother told her that she had to stop and leave her be, and she never had those dreams again. At that point, I was willing to try anything. In the afternoon, I went up to my room. I faced the corner of my room where I saw her. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and said, "I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I wish I could help. But you have to stop. You have to go, please." Contrary to how this post has been written thus far, I didn't hear a voice, I didn't see an apparition, I didn't feel the spirit lift. I felt nothing. All I know is I never experienced anything seemingly paranormal ever again in that house, after I said what I said. My parents ended up divorcing, and my mother and I sold the house to live in a condo. I'm happy to report that the condo I currently live in has no freaky occurrences. If any realists have an explanation for any of the things I experienced, fire away. A little girl and her family moved into my old home. She was around the age I was when these incidents started happening. I think she was going to bunk down in my room. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 278. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then I'd appreciate it if you shared it around to all the people and the things and the stuff. You know the things and stuff I'm talking about. And the people. You know what I mean. It's the weekend. Let's not stress ourselves out. Okay, let's see. No shoutouts, I believe, today. No, I think the next one might be Sunday. Okay, so let's just move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. Then we'll go put up our feet and wiggle our toes. Alright, here we go. Hellfreezer's question of the day. Which celebrity do you think smells the best? And what do you think they smell like? I'm going to pick David Tennant. I think he smells like cherries and smiles. Okay, let me know what your favorites are and leave it in an answer in a comment below. Or you could attach it to a pigeon. Do you still do that these days? My grandpa used to keep pigeons. I don't think I ever used them for messages, though. Anyway, okay, sorry, right, moving on. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.